Have only A1 copy.
Some silicone implants should be available.
Should silicone gel breast implants be widely available? A question of choice versus safety. Keeping employees healthy and happy. How can small businesses afford health insurance for their workers? And gerrymandering along Tobacco Road and the smoke signals it sends across the country.
You can have a rally off of every exit off of Interstate 85 and touch all the people.
From CNN, this is The World Today with Frank Sesno in Washington.
Thanks for joining us. Catherine Cryer is off tonight. We begin with the highly charged issue of silicone gel breast implants. After 3 days of hearings, a Food and Drug Administration advisory panel has unanimously recommended that implants remain available, but on a vastly limited basis. The final vote came just about a half hour ago. From Bethesda, Maryland, CNN medical correspondent Jeff Levine joins us now with the latest. Jeff?
Well, Frank, the FDA advisory panel has made its recommendation, and that is that silicone breast implants should stay on the market, but only with very tight restrictions. These devices would be made available only through supervised medical experiments and trials. The panel debated how broad that access to the implant should be, but they concluded that the access should be narrow indeed. Now, here's how the motion passed.
This panel recommends to the FDA that there be limited access to breast implants on this basis, that the access to these implants for augmentation purposes be restricted to carefully controlled, limited clinical trials, but that there be a wider access to these implants for patients who require this for reconstruction, and that includes anatomic correction. But these two would be under controlled clinical trial situations.
The panel says that some implants should be made available for cosmetic purposes, but wider access should be made for implants for cancer patients. Clearly, there were mixed emotions on the advisory panel.
We rejected the information available to us as being inadequate to prove the safety of the product. We have done so again. I personally have more concerns than I did last November. The second vote, which we took last November, was one to ensure the public health of those people who might need it in a sense that could not be met in other ways. And I think we have done exactly the same thing now, and I hope that the press will convey that message, that we do not regard this product as safe in terms of its general availability, but we do feel that restricted access to it may be important for some populations, and that we certainly feel additional information must be gathered in a variety of ways.
We need to emphasize that this is just a recommendation, although it is an important one. The full FDA must now decide what to do with this recommendation. We anticipate the ruling should come within 60 days. Jeff Levine, CNN, reporting live from Bethesda, Maryland.
Thanks, Jeff. We'll have more on the breast implant story. At the bottom of the hour, we'll talk with two counselors on implants. Also, this programming note, CNN will air a special report on the issue tonight called Implants, New Image, New Worries. It airs at 10:30 Eastern Time. And now turning to this other news in the world today, United Nations Secretary General Boutros Ghali is demanding that Israel withdraw its forces from southern Lebanon. Earlier today, Israeli troops drove through UN barricades and entered a UN peacekeeping zone in pursuit of Shiite Muslim guerrillas. At the United Nations, the Secretary General called in the Israeli ambassador to protest the incursion. Lebanon's ambassador said his government may call for an emergency session of the Security Council. A senior Bush administration official says UN forces should be sacrosanct and calls Israel's actions extremely unfortunate. Secretary of State James Baker expressed the administration's public concern.
I think it's unfortunate that there are these ever-increasing cycles of violence, action, reaction, further reaction.
He's being careful not to point the finger at anyone for it.
The circumstances are still being looked at. We've sent demarches to all the parties, and we've asked them to refrain exercise maximum restraint. We hope that'll happen.
The Israeli government insists it's acting only in self-defense. CNN's Linda Scherzer has more.
While the two sides traded rocket and artillery fire, Israeli tanks and troops burst out of Israel's security zone into South Lebanon and into villages considered major strongholds of the Hezbollah.
The Israeli operation was a limited, temporary operation aimed at terrorists and Katyusha rocket launching sites.
UN forces in the area report seeing 17 tanks. An Israeli army spokesman reports only 7. As the tanks pushed forward into Lebanese territory, Israeli bulldozers plowed through UN peacekeeping force vehicles, blocking their way.
About 7 o'clock local time this morning, first 7 tanks showed up at a checkpoint manned by the Nepalese troops of United Nations here. And the local checkpoint tried to block them, but then we realized that they wanted to go further north in the UN zone. They smashed their way using bulldozers and the tanks to smash up vehicles and push them out of the way, which also led to fist fights and a lot of physical confrontation between the two sides.
The artillery exchanges between Israel and the Hezbollah began Monday, one day after Israeli helicopters attacked and killed Hezbollah leader Sheikh Abbas Musawi. Since then, Shiite guerrillas have fired more than 55 rockets inside northern Israel. Israeli gunners have answered back with hundreds of artillery shells. Infantry soldiers have been on high alert patrolling the border fence. But there has been no visible buildup of troops or tanks along the border. And Israeli army officials say that the military operation inside Lebanon is a limited one. Soldiers plan to be in and out quickly. Israel's military won't become involved in Lebanon on the level of its 1982 invasion, says its prime minister. But with tensions escalating and casualties mounting, the army is quickly being engaged in a bloody conflict with the Hezbollah. Linda Scherzer, CNN, on the Israeli-Lebanese border.
By the way, officials at the State Department say so far the fighting in Lebanon has not affected the Middle East peace talks. They say all participants have confirmed that they intend to show up for the next round, scheduled to begin Monday here in Washington. As the violence continues, political battle lines are shaping up inside Israel. The Likud party has just re-elected Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir as party leader. He easily defeated 2 other candidates, but Shamir may get a tougher challenge in the June general election than he had planned on. Yitzhak Rabin won yesterday's vote to lead the opposition Labor Party, ousting Shimon Peres. Today, Rabin, who led Israel's forces in the 1967 war, told CNN he believes most Israelis will support his party's platform of Palestinian autonomy.
The autonomy is an international commitment of Israel, signed by Mr. Begin in the Camp David Accords, ratified by our legislative body, the Knesset. Therefore, I believe that Labour Party government can and will achieve agreement with the Palestinians in the territories about the autonomy. Our policy is to stop the political settlements in the territories.
And Rabin said he distinguishes between settlements built for security reasons and those established merely for political reasons. Sources say a United Nations commission is expected to recommend redrawing the international border between Iraq and Kuwait. U.S. officials say Iraq is likely to lose some territory, including a few valuable oil wells and part of a strategically located port city. Shifting the border north is likely to outrage Iraq. The nation originally justified its invasion of Kuwait by accusing Kuwait of stealing Iraqi oil near the border. Iraq has allegedly been slowly pushing into Kuwaiti territory since the 1960s. Top Iraqi ministers beating Shiite Muslim rebel prisoners, executions by firing squad, a 10-year-old boy's face burned beyond recognition by shells fired by Iraqi forces during the Shiite rebellion following the Gulf War. These are the kinds of Iraqi actions that have prompted the United Nations Human Rights Commission to urge action. It's calling for the Security Council to send human rights monitors to Iraq until the situation improves. South African President F.W. de Klerk is threatening to resign if white voters don't support his reforms. De Klerk announced that he'll call white-only referendum on ending apartheid before the end of March. If rejected, de Klerk says he'll quit. And that could throw South Africa's drive for multiracial democracy into chaos. De Klerk's challenge comes after his ruling party lost a special parliamentary election to pro-apartheid conservatives for the second time in 3 months. U.S. health officials are searching for more than 300 people who took a Valentine's Day flight from South America to Los Angeles. 5 people on the plane have been diagnosed with cholera, and one of them has died. Argentina Airlines Flight 386 originated in Buenos Aires, and it stopped in Lima, Peru, before heading on to the States. South America is in the midst of a cholera epidemic. The disease is transmitted through undercooked seafood from polluted waters. Health officials say it's difficult to transmit from person to person. And coming up on The World Today, rival Democrats fan out across the nation in a push toward the next round of presidential primaries. And
it's almost like there is no middle class anymore. It's like there's one big scared class. And there's a frightened class.
then some thoughts on the shrinking middle class.
It's life.
Unbelievable.
At the company picnic, and his team lost.
Riding high in a prairie, shot down in Maine.
Our employee health plan covers him, right?
Yes and no, with co-payments and deductibles.